Spring has finally sprung in Chicagoland area, which means flowers, showers, and the perfect time to get summer produce planting in the garden. And who better than to give us some gardening tips than Executive Chef at Chicago Marriott Lincolnshire Resort, Chef Pierre Duval. Hi, Chef. How are you today?
Good. How are you today?
Good, good. So for those of you tuning in who don't know, Marriott Lincolnshire Resort has a 2-acre farm here. You can see that there's a lot of produce. So when you hear associates at the resort say that, you know, those phrases, farm to table, farm fresh, you can know that most of the produce coming to your plate at the resort is truly coming from the backyard. Chef, it looks like you have a lot of great stuff growing. So let's talk about what you're standing here in the garden. What do we have? What are some things that we have growing here in front of us?
Here we've got some French radishes. Actually, they're a little bit long radishes. They're almost ready to go, maybe a couple weeks away. They've been planted for 4 weeks now. They probably have another week or so. They're not that thick yet, but they're getting there. So what I'm going to do is make sure they stay covered, and then in about 2 weeks they'll be ready to harvest. But that's probably one of the first things we're going to harvest here in the farm.
Okay.
So,
and why are you covering them, Chef?
I also make sure they stay out of the sun. They don't get sunburned, and then they stay nice and covered.
Okay, see, vegetables can get sunburned just like people. They need soil.
Just like potatoes.
Just like potatoes.
Yes, potato likes to be covered too.
Okay. What else do we have going here in the garden? We see we have several plots, but what are some things that are immediately in front of us here?
First thing here is our kale, which we also planted about a month ago, just at the end of April. They were about as big as my finger when we just planted. So you can see just 4 weeks later, it's a pretty nice sized plant already.
Wow, wow, that's a lot of kale. Some good salads to come this summer.
And then right next to it, we have our broccoli. Broccoli do very well here. We did, like broccoli did so well last year. We did cauliflower and broccoli. Cauliflower didn't do very well, but broccoli did amazing. So get ready for a lot of broccoli sip coming up this summer.
All right, broccoli and kale. Sounds great and healthy. Okay, Chef, let's see. So you got a few other plots. So down here, is this, again, more broccoli, kale?
Actually, this is Savoy cabbage.
Savoy cabbage,
yes,
okay.
Absolutely. Which we make, in the fall, we'll make some sauerkraut with it. That we use for Reuben sandwiches, but yeah, we make cabbage with those guys.
Okay, beautiful. Well, let's take a look at a couple of other plots. I know over here we have, you said earlier, some onions.
Yeah, all these were like seed starters, so that's why you see in this plot is mostly you don't see very much yet. We have onions right here, which red onions and yellow onions over there.
Okay.
And then right over here we have some red beets.
Okay.
And then couple. Yeah, just sticking up some green beans over there. Couple,
okay,
they're coming
we can see
along.
Sprouts.
Yes,
okay.
The big sprout over here.
Okay, great, great.
But a lot of things that all this, I said the beets probably have another 40 days. The green beans a little bit longer, but they you know, everything. The green beans grow very fast and very well also.
That's great. Well, you know, while we're walking here, you know, we see a lot of water. We've had a lot of rain in the Lincolnshire area the past couple weeks. But, you know, it looks like you have some hills dug here. What's the significance of some of the hills that have been dug for the garden?
Absolutely. The reason we grow hills and trenches, you can see the trenches over there, is, I mean, it rains a lot, it's windy a lot, and if we don't build those, then everything gets flooded.
Okay.
So we have to build them to make sure, I mean, all the vegetables need water, but you gotta make sure they don't get too much water also.
Sure, sure. Okay, and so, all right, so we have some of the hills, so for water to also, you know, prevent a bunch of water going in, but then you also mentioned trenches. So trenches help get more water to...
Well, no, the trenches are making sure the water goes away. So you can see right here, there's a pot of water, and then everything goes down to the road over there. But yeah, we make sure that the water leaves the plot as much as possible. It doesn't stay standing water there.
Okay, great. So there you go. You can see all the trenches that Chef has dug around the garden. And now we're approaching another beautiful plot. And wow, these look like they're almost ready to go. What do we have here?
Here we have some romaine. We have two kinds of romaine that we planted about a little bit over a week ago. But those were started in a greenhouse about 5 weeks now. So they should be about 6 weeks old, 1 week outside and 5 weeks inside. But you can see they're growing very well. So this is the first year we actually have a greenhouse. But yeah, they're probably 2 weeks away. 3 weeks away.
Okay. Now, Chef, we have a question from one of our viewers, Katie. She says, wow, it looks so awesome. And she's curious, how many different fruits and vegetables are you growing at the resort about right now?
I'll say right now we probably, between all the tomatoes and all the peppers, I'll say probably at least 50.
50,
at least 50.
okay.
Just tomato, we grow 20 different kind of tomatoes.
Okay.
Peppers, I think we have about 8. Lettuces, we have 5. And then the broccoli, Swiss chard, kale, Brussels sprouts, cucumbers, zucchini, squash, you name it.
Wow,
And then,
wow.
without forgetting all the pears and apple that we have right behind me.
Oh, okay. So pears and apple trees right behind us. Oh, wow. There's quite a variety here at the Lincolnshire farm. Chef, I know you were telling us earlier that there were quite a few tomatoes. How many tomatoes are you expecting this season?
Well, with tomatoes, we'll see how the weather does, but right now we planted over 300 tomato plants.
300, okay.
300, yes.
Okay, all right, so I see there's a bunch of tomato plants out here. We're gonna get close up here in just a second because obviously they're vines, so they grow up into the gates there. But what's really unique is Chef was saying that this is the first year you guys have a greenhouse.
Absolutely.
So what do we have growing in here? And if you can't tell from the outside, it is very steamy. This is a real live greenhouse.
Oh yeah, that's nice and warm. It's about 85 degrees in there right now.
Wow.
And you can see the tomatoes that are in there are a lot bigger and stronger than the one outside right now.
Great.
These were planted about 5 weeks ago in the middle of April.
Okay. And when are you hoping to harvest some of these?
I'll say we probably have maybe mid-June to the end of June.
Mid-June to the end of June. Okay, great. And then it looks like we have some littler plants over here. These are tomatoes as well?
Those are all heirloom tomatoes. They are zebra tomatoes. So they're medium-sized tomatoes, and they're all red and green and yellow zebras.
Okay, great, great. So, do you have any gardening tips for people that might have the luxury of a greenhouse? Or, if somebody wanted to create this but doesn't necessarily have to have a greenhouse at home, what's something they can do? Or what's something that you might do at home to grow your tomatoes?
I grew at home. A lot of these tomatoes actually, my wife and I started at home by just putting some plants close to a window. Make sure they get sun in the morning, sun during the days. They get water daily. And all those plants, I mean, they all came. This got planted maybe a week ago. So I just grew this at home just from seeds. Very, very simple. So you can start from seed at home. And as long as you pass Mother's Day, usually you're ready to plant outside. And you don't need a greenhouse. As long as you have a house that gets plenty sun, you can do this yourself at home.
That's great. That's great, Chef. Well, we're all set with our tomatoes. These look great, and we can't wait to try some this summer. Now, stepping back outside, we mentioned there's a lot of tomatoes growing, but these are gates that you have here, correct? And they protect and let the tomatoes grow?
Yeah, absolutely. So those are cages that will go over the tomato, just like this. And then the tomato, it's gonna grow straight into it. And usually they go 5 feet tall for sure, easily.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as our viewers can see, even in the wind, it withstands the wind out here, but they're almost, when we're getting on the ground, they're almost as tall as us. So one of the other questions that we had is, how long will the garden be, in bloom out here?
Well, like years past, growing outside, we grow from mid-May to end of September, middle of October.
Okay.
But now with the greenhouse, you should extend our season from mid-February to all the way to the beginning of December.
Okay.
We have like the root vegetable that we should be able to plant. Like we're probably gonna plant that once tomato season is down. We're gonna plant carrots, beets, and more radishes in the greenhouse that we should be able to harvest later in the winter.
Okay, carrots, beets, and radishes that we should be able to in the winter. Okay, and Chef, so we have a lot of seasonal produce. You mentioned that we're growing some radishes, some tomatoes. What are some other things that are coming into season as we approach the early summer months?
I mean, right now the first thing we're gonna have ready are gonna be the radishes. They're very soon. The kale is right around the corner, and the lettuces are the first thing we're gonna get.
Okay,
Absolutely.
great. And do you switch out some of these vegetables? No, you mentioned the greenhouse, but do you switch out some vegetables later in the season?
The same thing, like a lot of the things we grow right now, we will start again, mostly root vegetable, we start again middle of summer to harvest in the fall. Mostly lots of carrots, and beets.
Okay. Okay. Great. All right. Well, let's look at some of your gardening tips, Chef. So I know we already talked a little bit about trenching, some soil drainage, and things like that. But what are some other things that, as people prepare their gardens for the summer, that they should be aware of?
Well, you need one thing, knowing your soil is very important, like the trenching and the make sure you don't get too much water. You see right here, we still have some work to do to make sure again that the water goes away. So those tomatoes, if we leave them there with all this water, they're not going to be very happy.
Okay.
So we have to make sure that the water goes away.
Great. And what can you tell us about weeding? I mean, obviously, we were talking about weeding earlier, and it takes a lot of work. It's definitely not a one-man job out here, but
no, like it's cold today, but as soon as it gets nicer, we'll have the whole kitchen team, including Daniel, our farmer, Chef Scott, and everybody will be out here walking. Even with Everardo, we'll be walking out there. The sooner you weed, the better.
Okay.
I mean, if you let any weed grow for more than 2 weeks, it's gonna take you a long time to clean everything. Okay. So as soon as you see, you can see the first plot we had over there. If we don't do that very soon, it's going to be more difficult for us. But yeah, weeding early is always best.
Early and often is what we're hearing. Okay.
But once you get going, usually in the summer, then when you start early, then the weed at some point stop coming back.
Sure, sure. And then one more question. What about, where plants are planted and how they're planted next to each other? Is there a best way to do that?
Yeah, usually plants that you cook together grow well together. So over here we planted tomatoes and peppers. They usually grow very well together. They're like best friends, so they usually do very well growing together.
Okay, great.
Yeah, that's one thing that you can do for sure over there.
Okay, and should we avoid planting certain produce or crops next to one another?
Usually they say like broccoli and cabbage has to be kind of away from the other because they take a lot from the soil, and if you plant it to other vegetables too close, they're gonna take all the nutrient for themselves. They just take a lot from the soil.
Okay, that's great. Let's see, Chef, what else do we have?
We got the bees.
We have the bees. Well, you know what? So we did mention that we have the 2-acre farm out here at Marriott Lincolnshire Resort, but all the honey is harvested fresh as well. So we're going to come right around the greenhouse and you're going to see how close the 15 beehive apiary is. Chef, let's talk a little bit about the bees. How long have the bees been at the resort?
I'll say the bees have been here for 7 years now.
7 years.
7 years, absolutely. It's kind of, I was telling you earlier, the bees is like a pet. I don't have a dog at home, but I'm glad we have bees because I come every day here and I make sure, every day I stop to make sure they're okay. It's like one of those things.
That's great. And let's see, how many times a year do you get to harvest the honey?
We harvest twice a year, once in August and usually once early fall, end of September to beginning of October.
Okay, well our viewers can see there is a lot of bee activity happening. It's a little windy today, but they don't seem to mind.
No, usually once if the weather is above 60 degrees, they like to be outside. Once it gets below 60 degrees, they usually like to stay inside, but otherwise they're flying around. For sure.
Okay, and the bees just started becoming active then. Is the temperature warm up?
No, they always find like a sunny day. Like even if it's cold during the day, as soon as you get sun, let's say from 12 to 2 or 3, they come out.
Yep.
As soon as there's flowers outside, they're outside for
Great.
sure.
That's great.
But yeah, we have over 15 beehive across, and then it's good to have them for the honey, obviously, but it also helps a lot with the garden and pollinating.
Absolutely. Well, and the sun just came out, so they might start buzzing even more. But you said, it's great for the honey, but the pollinating. So since you've been at the resort and have been maintaining the bees, what's a key role, in that pollination process that bees play here at the farm? Do they prefer a specific type of vegetable?
No, I think they go after multiple flowers. As long as you got a plant with flowers, they'll go and get the pollen for sure.
That's great.
And again, it helps a lot. They go from male to female, and next thing you know, you have a fruit.
That's great.
So, but yeah, it helps a lot. I mean, a lot of farmers rent sometimes you rent beehives from beekeepers to be able to, you know, and it's rentable. So we don't need to rent. We have them right here.
We don't need to rent.
One thing that we do, don't forget that one thing that we do with our honey is our honey badger beer that we do with Lake Bluff Brewery.
Oh, great.
So Lake Bluff Brewery, they help us, and we have that awesome beer that we can have. It's available at our resort and also at the Lake Bluff Brewery in Lake Bluff.
Okay, great. We'll see. Look at that. Farm fresh honey, farm fresh vegetables, and you even get some of that farm freshness in your beer from your local brewery at Lake Bluff. That's great. Sandy, thank you so much for joining us. She says hi and is loving the video so far. Chef, is there any closing words? Is there any last tips that you'd like to give our viewers before we sign off and let them get back to their Wednesday?
No, one of the things is like, whatever it's bee or gardening, you know, just be patient, take your time, and you know, if you enjoy it, everything will come along. You know, just let nature do itself.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for your time, Chef. It's been such a pleasure. I think we've all learned a lot, and especially gotten some really great views of the garden here at Marriott. And for those tuning in, don't forget that Marriott Lincolnshire Resort, alongside Chef, will be opening 2 new restaurants this fall, 3 Embers and Wright's Brew and Bistro. So you can expect to see fresh ingredients like the ones we showed you here today, and of course, honey. So to learn more about Chicago Marriott Lincolnshire Resort, Chef Duvall, and the beautiful garden apiary, as well as the new restaurant concepts, don't forget to visit ChicagoMarriottLincolnshire.com. Chef, thanks once more for your time today. Everyone else, have a great week.